respected Chairman and Managing Director of IOB, Sri Narendra, Sri Srinivasan, President Cyber Society of India, other office bearers of the CSI, representatives of the media, senior executives from commercial banks, ladies and gentlemen. I am really overwhelmed by your encouragement of words and appreciation. I will certainly convey this to my other colleagues who are members of this team, because it is not an individual work, it is a team work. I will certainly convey this to all my colleagues. In fact, Mr. Narendra made a very, very subtle point. Even without reading the speech, he covered every aspect of my report as a practical, as a airport. Yeah. Sure. So he covered almost all aspects of my report from the practitioner's point of view. I think this is what he has been telling us, that all of us also should share our experience and see that the computers or the crime in particularly in the area of computers is reduced. In fact, like many of you, I am also not a technical person, but it was my initiative and enthusiasm, and of course at the right time I was heading the Department of Banking Supervision, which looks into all the aspects of banks operation, including the frauds, and particularly frauds in electronic media and other latest technologies. And that is how I ended up in making this, initiating this group's work. Today I understand that the committee work has generated a lot of work for the IT personnel in the banking industry. I understand that more than 2-3 billion worth of orders have already been placed by various banks, consultants. Consultants also are getting a lot of work, because they are the persons who have to now guide, implement the committee's recommendations. And from the banker's side, yes, a lot of resources have to be devoted for upgrading. It is not necessarily that you have technology and not upgrade your technology, and that is what is happening. Some of the initiatives have not been implemented, and we have seen some reactions in the days to come. I will now go for my formal speech, which covers all the aspects of the committee's report. I am very delighted to be amongst you in this seminar, and I would like to compliment Mr. Srinivasan and of course Mr. Narendra for taking this initiative. And I understand this is the first time such a seminar has been organized on the committee's report. I'm very happy about this. While the group itself was officially named as a very long phrase, a working group on information security, electronic banking, technology risk management, and cyber frauds, I would like to add in a lighter vein that the organizers have done a rather good job of running the computerized optimization process and simply calling it as RBI's Gopalakrishna Working Committee report. At this juncture, as chairman of the group, I would like to acknowledge the inputs received from experts in the working group who were drawn from various commercial banks, academic institutions, legal profession, consultants, professional bodies like IDRBT and DSI, which is a very pioneer in data security, and of course from various departments of the Reserve Bank of India. The report has received widespread appreciation, as some of you know, even internationally, due to the depth and the sweep and its coverage on IT-related risk and expectation it sets for commercial banks. As you know, the guidelines were issued by the Reserve Bank of India on April 29, 2011, based on the working group's recommendation, after suitably incorporating suggestions received from all the stakeholders. Somewhere in January 2011, the committee's draft report was placed for public comments, and we received a lot of comments from the stakeholders, from the banker, from IT experts, from cyber fraud experts, and so on and so forth. Most of them we are trying to accommodate, and then that is how the report has incorporated all the stakeholders And as somebody was mentioning, we have taken it from all aspects, bankers, the practitioners, from all angles we have taken, even individual comments have been incorporated in the report. That is how this became a very, very comprehensive document. I would like to delve in the address the origin of the working group, broad overview of the report, the key issues that have been raised in respect of the group's report in my interaction with various stakeholders, and critical points going forward. The genesis of the working group, how the group was set up itself is a very interesting story. The working group was an outcome of the study conducted by the Reserve Bank of India on frauds, particularly frauds in electronic banking like ATM, debit cards and internet banking, which revealed increasing trend during the last few years. This could have been simplified, or a circular would have been issued to all the banks. But as a practitioner and as a supervisor, I thought that it should not be left to this stage of simply issuing a circular of circulating the modus operandi of the frauds and closing. What I took initiative was to review the entire IT system in the banking sector, including IS audit, IS security. So I thought this is an opportunity for the Reserve Bank to come out with a very, very comprehensive recommendations, because till this report, we had, not that there was no guidelines on IT and IT related aspect. There were guidelines, but they were all very sporadic, relating to certain aspects of the, whether it is audit or on other aspects relating to DR, disaster recovery. But nowhere you had a very, very comprehensive guideline or a standard set by the Reserve Bank of India, like the Basel, what we have, Basel I, Basel II. We didn't have anything like this in the information technology before this committee. That's why we thought we should have lay down a standard, a minimum standard on which banks can build over it. So this is how the committee was started, and the committee's report, the governor in his policy of April 2010 announced that a working group under my chairmanship will be constituted, and the committee's recommendations will be placed before the public. That is what the assurance the governor made in his annual policy in April 2010. As well-known psychologist says, truism goes people don't react to reality, they react to their perception of reality. This is what is very, very crucial in the information technology. It is important to ensure that customers have sound perception of technology and security process followed by banks. Also, there were no defined minimum level regulatory prescription in IT, as just now I said. Some of the regulatory prescriptions relating to IT were quite outdated, and a need was felt that we should upgrade the guidelines in certain aspects. IT related issues like legislation of IT Act 2000 and their amended version of 2008 was also available before the committee. It was therefore felt that the issue arising out of IT usage need to be examined in a holistic manner and a comprehensive manner. The outcome was the announcement of the formation of the group by the governor. I would not like to waste much of your time how the group approached these issues. In my written speech, I'll be conveying it to you, but I'll straight away go to the broad overview of the working group's report so that it is well appreciated. The report has about 265 key recommendations in various areas. Some of the people made a joke. Your summary itself is running into some 40 pages. How would you convince the banking sector and others to accept the report? I said, I mean, the entire committee also debated this issue, and we finally felt this is one report where it's like a Bible. At one place, you get everything relating to IT issues in banking. So why not, even if the summary itself is some 30 pages, it doesn't matter. But of course, the report is running into another 300 pages, which is a very, very comprehensive. So we said yes, we accepted that the 265 key recommendations are very crucial and classified into various categories. The crucial systemic recommendations relate to creation of multi-stakeholder forums or forums in relevant areas and bankers forum in various areas, facilitating sharing of best practices, cyber threat information sharing and alert mechanism, creation of industry-wide crisis management setup, need for declaration of banking sector as critical infrastructure and provision of priority infrastructure support during exigencies. This is very sad that in India, the banking sector, like any other sector, we have to try for the bandwidth. We have to try with MTNL and other private players for giving us a dedicated line. Despite paying money, I think many of you will share that you don't get whatever assured bandwidth. This is the biggest issue. Whereas in countries like UK, USA, the information technology, particularly the banking sector, is treated as a very, very crucial. So they get priority in the allotment of bandwidth or whatever safety is required for the banking system, because the banking system is a very, very crucial system for the economy. It is a nervous system of the economy, and that is why so much importance is given in countries like USA, where legislation says that banking sector should be given priority in the allotment, and in case of exigency, you are given a separate bandwidth to take care of your exigency, like what happened in the World Trade disaster. Within 2 days, the entire system came through. That is because of these legislations USA has, and unfortunately in India we do not have this. So we have recommended as part of our recommendation that the IT infrastructure and telecommunication for the banking should be given a priority. This is recognition of the fact that the fighting cybercrime effectively is ultimately a function of level of cooperation among the stakeholders. I am very happy to note that IBA was also, I forgot to mention, IBA was a member of this working group. The chief executive, Mr. Ramakrishnan himself, was a member, and I understand that IBA has already set up some 5 or 6 committees recommended by this working group as, for the CSIO forum and various things which I just now mentioned, and it is going to be a long way in ensuring a better system in the banking sector. Yeah. I now present an outline of recommendations for commercial banks. Although the report is meant for commercial bank, I feel that the report can be implemented without much difficulty by the entire banking and financial sector. The recommendations have 2 main dimensions. The first is one pertains to the need for involvement of the board and senior level management, called tone at the top, and providing for exclusive organizational governance structure each areas. No major bank-wide initiative can succeed unless the push and commitment comes from board of directors and top management. And I am very happy today that many of the banks, as part of the implementation of the governance issue, have started inducting IT professionals and IT experts at the board level. This is the first time we are seeing this happening in the banking industry. The second dimension relates to various policies, standards and procedures, and implementing these effectively. These are indicated in the report as crucial components of framework. In each chapter it has been indicated. Through this systemic approach, the group aimed to achieve a robust, consistent and focused framework of guidelines and standards in each of the areas under its consideration. The group also attempted to maintain a balance between high-level guidelines or principles-based approach and detailed recommendations, or what is known as a rule-based approach, which in India we are familiar, as per its judgment. Of course, achieving this is not easy given the complexity of the contemporary technology-driven banking process, exemplified by the various layers of components and subcomponents on and their interactions, which together make up the information system. The large size of the report could be attributed to the facts, coupled with endeavor of the group to holistically address IT related issues. I now turn to the other major recommendations of the group, which have also been indicated in the final RBI guidelines. The recommendation relating to IT governance, namely include IT strategy committee at the board level, IT steering committee, the need for establishing and maintaining an enterprise information model to enable application development and decision supporting activities, consistency between IT strategy, business focus, and IT project risk assessment for major projects. The largest section of the report pertains to information security so as to achieve robust processes to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data information, which is a key asset for the banks, as Mr. Narendra rightly mentioned in his opening address. From the governance point of view, key aspects of information security comprise the focus of the Chief Information Security Officer, reporting of information security function to risk management without having a direct relationship with IT function, and Information Security Steering Committee. One of the main expectations is the defense in depth approach, where a reasonable level of security is provided across various layers. International Information Security Standard ISO 27001 is recommended for critical function, which I will indicate why we have recommended certain minimum standards. The report has also highlighted the danger of compliance or checklist type of mindset, which all of us in banking industry is very familiar, called for dynamic and proactive assessment of various threats and their mitigation. The report has called for enhancing the use of technology for identifying anonymous e-banking transaction, effective analysis of audit trails and logs, enhancing audit processes through use of computer assisted audit tools. Today, with millions of transactions taking place every day in the banking system, it is not possible for to seeing the transaction manually. So bankers, auditors have to use computer aided tools. I think that is what we are recommended as part of our group's recommendation. Identifying vulnerabilities in systems and network and using application systems for carrying out critical business processes involving financial, regulatory, legal, MIS and customer related implications, rather than through manual method through using of spreadsheets. The group has emphasized the importance of identifying the legal issues arising from use of information technology, as I mentioned in the beginning. In this context, IT Act 2000 and IT Amendment Act 2008 is very relevant. Today, privacy has become a key issue. The risk management committee at the board level needs to be put in place processes to ensure that the legal risk arising out of cyber loss are identified and adequately addressed. It needs to be ensured that the concerned functions are adequately staffed and the personnel handling are trained to carry out functions efficiently. The operation risk group needs to incorporate legal risk as part of the operation risk framework and take steps to mitigate the risk assessed. The legal function within the bank should advise business groups on legal issues arising out of the use of information technology, which is very lacking in most of the banks. Report contains the recommendations to strengthen the business continuity framework in banks. I recall a funny quote from one of the famous authors: "Those who do not archive the past are condemned to retype it." The need for robust backup, archival, DR process and their proper testing, apart from various other BCP and DR related measures, have been recommended. The report has a separate chapter on customer education, measures and importance accorded thereto. As you know, leaving aside the big technology powered cyber frauds, many lateral thinking frauds seems to think that they need no waste of time in mobilizing high-tech methods to commit cyber frauds, when they could easily get confidential information by simply asking. I refer to here the social engineering technique which has been used by the naval officers who have passed on very, very crucial information about the defense of the country very recently, which is making a news in the last few days. It is important in this context that customers are adequately and appropriately made aware of the various risk and protection measures in respect of e-banking. Some of the recommendations are critical in context of compliance to Basel III, Basel II and Basel III as bankers, wherein IT system need to have robust controls so as to provide assurance on the completeness and reliability of the output generated by them. Further, as you have been aware, the calculation of capital, a new risk category known as operational risk, has been added along with market risk and credit risk under Pillar 1 in the Basel II guidelines. Now I will come to the working committee's group's report and RBI guidelines and certain issues which is going to bother all of us in the days to come and which has to be addressed as part of the implementation. I now attempt to answer some of the key questions raised regarding the working group report and RBI guidelines. It may be felt that the implementation of such a large number of recommendations may be difficult for smaller banks. However, it should be kept in mind that group does not recommend one size fit all solution. The implementation of the recommendation should be based on nature and scope of the activity engaged by banks and technology environment prevalent in the banks. The RBI guidelines have also clearly stated so. Accordingly, we need to appreciate that today most of the commercial banks have core banking solutions and other critical application systems in various areas like treasury, risk management, international banking, apart from various electronic delivery channels like mobile banking, internet banking, and so on and so forth. Regulator expects a reasonable assurance from the smaller banks akin to the larger banks, and similarly a customer of a smaller bank should not be at a disadvantage in any way by banking with a smaller commercial bank. They should be reassured that the smaller banks also follow minimum set of standards and good practices laid down by the regulator. Beyond the minimum level of requirement, various details have been worked out by the individual banks based on comprehensive risk assessment and based on the outcome of such exercise. Individual security measures can be tailored. Further, frauds tend to migrate to areas of least resistance from secure to insecure banks, and hence their occurrence must be prevented. We need to ensure that robust technology related controls and processes at all commercial banks to facilitate customer confidence in our banking system. Another comment is that of the time frame for implementing the guidelines appears to be too aggressive. This is one of the criticism against the report, but I would like to address this issue. The final RBI guidelines had required implementation of the basic organizational framework and put in place policies and procedures which do not require extensive budgetary support and infrastructure or technological changes by October 31st, 2001. Rest of the application guidelines were required to be implemented within a period of 1 year. The timeline is another indication of the seriousness placed by the RBI on the implementation of the relevant guidelines by the commercial banks. RBI has also clearly laid down the broad approach which banks need to follow in implementing the guidelines. In order to provide focused, project-oriented approach towards implementation of the guidelines, banks were required to conduct a formal gap analysis, as the first session where you were discussing this issue, between their current status and stipulation of as laid down in the circular, and put in place a time-bound plan to address the gap and comply with the guidelines. The progress in implementation process leading to benefits of banks and other the progress in implementation of the recommendations was required to be monitored by the top management on an ongoing basis, and a review of the implementation status was required to be put up to the board at a quarterly intervals. Banks were also required to incorporate their annual report for the year 2011 and 12 onwards the measures taken in respect of various subject areas indicated in the RBI guidelines. I also understand that IBA has formed various internal teams for implementation of the guidelines. This is a very positive development. And more importantly, banks have to disclose in the balance sheet what is the status. This will also give a lot of information to the public, what is the health of their bank, where they keep their accounts. So it will be a check on the banking system. It is also observed by few, this some of the issues that is being debated is what the group's report is largely technology neutral in respect of areas like two-factor authentication for internet banking transaction. So the group has not recommended any software by any company or any system, because we have been asked to ensure that we are technology neutral, so that any company which wants to develop, they have to comply with the minimum standard and develop application over this. But in certain aspect, we have some differences. Why? That is what I am trying to justify here. Further, it is argued that some banks might have already gone ahead and implemented or invested in implementing some specific technology recently, and it may be difficult for them to change quickly. In this context, I would like to state that the recommendations of the group are broadly based on the best practices and guidelines issued by other regulators. One approach is that of the Federal Reserve of the US, who have indicated various second factor authentication methodologies, systems available, and left it to the banks to implement the measures based on a proper risk assessment for the internet banking and other channels. Whereas the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which has specifically called for dynamic one-time password based system or digital signature based system, and have also recommended measures to address the man in the middle attacks. While we have considered the best of the both approaches, we have leaned towards the approach followed by the MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, since the implementation of two-factor authentication and related measures were reportedly unsatisfactory in USA, as the banks chose the simpler and relatively insecure approaches. It should be noted that presently in India, the banks face legal risk in not using the PKI, that the public key index, which is available, based digital signatures for authenticating electronic records, as indicated in the RBI guidelines, which was issued somewhere in 2005. Since few banks were found to be using poor authentication mechanism, the group felt that the banks should implement certain minimum level of standards relating to second factor authentication for critical internet banking transactions. Banks which have implemented other technology may need to consider themselves about the efficacy of the two-factor methods implemented by them. In respect of security aspect, cost cannot be limited factor to provide reasonable level of security to enable customers confidentiality and protection of the risk in information asset. RBI guidelines have clarified that except where legally required, banks may consider any other equivalent or better or robust technology methodology based on new developments after carrying out diligent evaluation exercise. Another query has been why ISO 27001 standard has been advised to be implemented by the working group in certain areas which have cost implication for the banks. We understand the implication. The ISO 27001 information security standards are prescribed only for critical functions such as data center. Today all banks have core banking and large application. So only for such large data center processes, we have suggested that we should adopt 27200 ISO 27000, which is the international standard. However, there is no attempt to mandate the bank-wide process. We have not recommended that all processes should be 27001. Other frameworks provided by reputed professional bodies like DSCI India and IDRBT have also been recommended for consideration. Now coming to the road ahead, what is the status of implementation? I would like to share from the information available with me. At present, the crucial areas concerns are some banks still do not have comprehensive information security policies, despite the recommendation advising that within the first 6 months you should frame this. The implementation is not effective. Monitoring of service level agreements in respect of outsourced vendors, which you are referring, is not ensured. Capacity management plans are not robust. Appropriate vendor exit strategies are not in place. Audit trials and logs review processes are inadequate. IS audit processes are not comprehensive, as Mr. Narendra rightly mentioned. Business impact analysis is not done professionally before drawing up BCP. There is a lack of assessment of legal risk arising from IT-related legislation, and the process of design and development of awareness programs for customer is not in place. It is important to see tangible benefits to both customer and banks arising from effective implementation of guidelines by the banks. The demand placed from all commercial banks is high, and all the commercial banks may have to fill the gaps, although at different levels between their current state and the expectation from the Reserve Bank guidelines, which require to be bridged at the earliest. In other words, banks need to scale up their maturity level in respect of all areas suggested by the working group report. I'm sure you will acknowledge that the security is not a product but a process which requires all subcomponents to work together. As Edmund Brooke stated long back, better be despised for too anxious apprehension than ruined by too confident security. The key performance indicator is the quality and effectiveness of the measures taken and being proactive in managing and mitigating the risk. According to the few comments heard, current degree of cybercrime and cyber frauds in India is not as bad as Western world, and hence one need not be paranoid and focus too much on IT security and IT risk management process. I would like to reiterate that a basic principle of information security is to be ahead of the curve, and hence there is need for robust and comprehensive measures. Further, we need to demonstrate effectively that we cannot let our doors open for cyber criminals, fraudsters, terrorists to break the faith of the customers in the banking sector. RBI is very sensitive to this issue, and all stakeholders need to ensure that we do not lose our guard during the journey ahead. The working group's report can be considered as a key deliverable in this context. In fact, almost every other day, we understand in the Reserve Bank, we receive at least 4 to 5 complaints from customers who have lost money because of the phishing attack or the SMS, fictitious SMS you receive and respond. Highly educated, including bankers, highly qualified people are lured to these phishing mails, respond, and they lose money. Many of them have lost entire life savings by responding to such mails and SMS alerts. But despite RBI and banking sector advising that bankers won't call for any information relating to customers, we still have a large number of phishing mails and SMS frauds happening. So at this forum, I would request kindly educate customers in whatever manner you come across, including the society. I would request that this is one area where the customers should be educated. Bankers, everyone should try to see that you don't fall lured to these phishing mails and respond and lose money. In fact, in the Reserve Bank's website, we have a permanent ticker where this kind of information is there. Similarly, other banks also have started implementing it. Still, now after the metros, second tier and third tier cities, people are losing money. So even we have to go one or two steps down and educate people at the district level, at taluka level, that this kind of responses, they should not answer or respond to this mail and share their credit or the credit card information or the bank accounts, and which will lead to loss of money. I am sure such seminars which has been organized by you would certainly provide a forum for learning and sharing among the delegates, who I believe would gain valuable incremental knowledge on information security by the time this event concludes. Together we shall strive towards improving and sustaining secure banking process and practices. I wish all of you the very best endeavors in your endeavors and in this direction. I wish the seminar a great success and congratulate the organizers for their efforts in organizing this seminar on such a key topical issue and for contributing in their own way towards the cause of transforming e-banking security in Indian banking sector, as also for enhancing the awareness of the banking customers. Thank you very much for your patience.